Halo Reach is widely considered to be the last great Halo game. No other entry in the franchise since has been able to match up to Bungie's farewell, nor any of the other Halo titles under their belt. Though at this point, I think the Halo community would only be satisfied with Halo 3, 2. Anyway, Reach has so much going for it. My favorite campaign out of all the Halo games, some of the best aesthetics, presentation, weapons, and customization in the whole franchise, but at the same time, it laid the groundwork for a future filled with design decisions that clashed with Halo's original DNA. Now, a bit of background. Reach is the 5th game in the mainline Halo series. It was released in 2010 and was the final Halo game developed by Bungie, the original creators of the series working under Microsoft. They decided to part ways with Microsoft after Halo 3 because they felt they didn't have enough freedom to do what they wanted, which was clearly true considering they were forced to make 2 more Halo games before they could get out the door. And then they signed on to an even more controlling and greedy publisher, so funny how things turn out, huh? Anyway, Bungie was replaced by 343 Industries, a studio created by and for Microsoft. They still have control over the franchise today, though some prominent members of the original Bungie have trickled their way into 343 over the years. Reach was essentially Bungie's swan song, a farewell gift to the fans before their departure. This is why it's a prequel to the first game, Combat Evolved, to kind of tie things into a nice little circle with a bow on top. Unfortunately, Halo's popularity dipped dramatically soon after 343 took charge, most notably with the reception to Halo 4. More on that in a later video. The point I'm trying to make here is that most people point fingers at 343 for starting Halo's downward trend, and I don't disagree with that. But the purpose of this video essay is to look at the decisions 343 made and why they made them, which means that the first step to looking at that is to cover the decisions that came just before them. The question is, was it really Reach that killed Halo? So strap into your ODST drop pod and get ready to drop feet first into hell. This is Halo Reach, and how it reached out to the future. We'll begin with and mostly stick to multiplayer here, as I believe that is what holds the most retention with Halo fans. The campaigns are great, but they don't keep interest nearly as long, so coverage on that will be more brief. Before diving fully into Reach's multiplayer proper, I would like to present a little thing I like to call the Triforce of Halo multiplayer. The name is pending. Here we go, load of that! Equal starts, rewarding skill and commitment, and varied playlist offerings all surrounding a core of robust social features. It's hard to break down the appeal of Halo's multiplayer into a simple diagram like this, but it's the best I could come up with, and there's no greater personification of this Triforce than Halo 3. Probably the peak of Halo's popularity. Boasted equal starts, rewarded skill and commitment with special armor pieces and effects, offered the freedom to play a ton of match-made playlists as well as custom games, and all of these surrounded its core of robust social features. Pre-game and post-game lobbies, easily being able to friend and invite random players, map vetoing, quick join-ups with randoms into larger parties, double XP weekends, and playlists. It was a party game with a first-person shooter skin. And that is Halo. That is Halo's DNA. It's a sentiment that comes straight from Bungie, that Halo was always built to be a fun, chaotic, social experience, and that's why it's so appealing to so many people. Reach absolutely had these elements. It was still made by Bungie, and they still knew what they were doing, for the most part. The ball wasn't dropped yet, but I think they certainly fumbled it during its pass to 343, as some of Reach's design decisions began to erode away the Triforce of Halo multiplayer. I'm talking about the death of equal starts. Reach introduced a loadout system that gave players more freedom over their gameplay experience than ever before. With this system, they also introduced the armor ability system. This gave each player a selection of specialized abilities to change the way they could play the game. For example, invisibility, or active camouflage if you want to be technical, was changed from being a pickup on the map to being one of these abilities to be selected, and made weaker in the process so that it wasn't overpowered as hell for something that could be innate to a player. Other armor abilities included Sprint, which was pretty clunky for the time, but it's just a sprint, as well as a jetpack. Now, what impact did this have on equal starts? Well, there weren't equal starts anymore. Allowing players the freedom to pick and choose directly contradicted this core pillar of the Halo gameplay experience. As seen here in matchmaking, there could be multiple loadouts with different weapon starts and armor abilities. And sure, the system didn't mean total control. In general, the loadouts were dev-curated, with the same weapons across all the loadouts, only changing armor abilities. Mixing and matching weapon abilities came later. In fact, for custom games, it actually allowed for a lot more freedom, like this for example, allowing players to better feel and roleplay as specific roles. But the point is that Bungie had already laid the groundwork for 343 to double down on by beginning the death of equal starts. Off the rip, you couldn't know if the person you ran into would have a jetpack or a sprint. You couldn't know if some guy would beat you to a power weapon simply by having chosen something that'd get them to that power weapon faster than what you chose. With this removal of equal starts, it made the gameplay more frustrating overall. It made things more unbalanced, and while you still have the gameplay loop of scavenging and fighting over power weapons, it can still have repercussions on your gameplay experience. Like, if you take the pit in Halo 3, you spawn here, and a new player might go this way to immediately take a fight, but a more experienced player might go this way to grab the sniper spawn to challenge the enemy going for their own sniper, or go over here to grab the shotgun to go on to challenge control over the map's rocket launcher spawn. If this map were in Reach, and one guy on either team went for the sniper spawn in the area, but one of them has sprint and the other doesn't, the sprint guy immediately has a massive advantage. Look at Reach proper. You play Big Team Battle, a game mode meant to encourage playing with all the vehicles in the game sandbox, and you just use Armor Lock because it's objectively the most powerful ability to take against ground vehicles. Reach basically took what should have been, and even used to be power-ups or equipments on the map that should have been fought over, and decided to make them easily accessible to every player. And even if overall it can be considered as not that huge of a deal, the fact is that it was different. It was different, and in its difference, by allowing more player agency, it lessened Halo's appeal as a social party game with an FPS skin, because now you could have fun with some of the more wacky armor abilities like the hologram. But on the flip side of that same coin, you could also try harder and play sweatier with the more infuriatingly powerful armor abilities like Armor Lock and the Jetpack. You didn't just get to play in the sandpit anymore, you got to bring your own shovels, and some were better than others. Halo's DNA had been changed. But it's not all bad. Reach's multiplayer was still robust enough with the other core pillars of Halo that it was able to retain a player base well. It's why I consider it the precursor to the beginning of the end and not the actual beginning of it. Like I said before, Bungie fumbled the ball as they passed it to 343. It hadn't dropped yet. Reach still rewarded skill and commitment by having armor unlocks earned through credits that were earned through playing the game and leveling up, as well as through achievements in Halo 3 and Halo 3 ODST. Like all the Bungie Halo games, it featured an industry-leading level-up playlist variety, and supported the most robust social features in the series with its Forge and a variety of custom games that still hold up today. With the custom game browser on the Master Chief Collection, which supports all the Halo titles up to Halo 4, Reach's social offerings are more easily accessible than ever. Reach's multiplayer is not bad Halo multiplayer, not by a long shot. In most aspects, it's actually quintessential Halo, especially where it matters, its social party game nature. It just fumbled the bag a bit with some of its gameplay design decisions, like the loadout system, and it unfortunately boded grim for the future. Oh, and Bloom fucking sucks, but I also don't think it contributed to the beginning of the end for Halo as much as the loadouts and armor abilities did. They toned it down for MCC, and even got rid of it entirely by the next game of the series, so it's more of a footnote than anything else, just a one-off poor decision. But the death of Equal Starts had big repercussions for the franchise's future, and I believe is the primary reason that Reach couldn't retain a player base as well as Halo 3. Anyway, that's how Reach's multiplayer laid the groundwork for the beginning of Halo's decline. On to campaign. Reach's campaign is, in my opinion, the peak of Halo's storytelling. It works as a standalone story, it works as part of the franchise's overall narrative, and it just bleeds with passion, despair, and desperation. It's a truly incredible experience. Like I mentioned at the beginning, for the most part, the Halo campaigns are the main reason why people stick around for the long haul. Multiplayer bears the brunt of that since it's obviously more dynamic and offers more replayability than a curated sequence of levels that never change. But Reach made an attempt to make the campaign more appealing in the long run than other Halo games by making the player character in the campaign use your armor that is unlocked through playing multiplayer. Right there, your commitment to the game is rewarded, as you can not only make the Spartan you want with your own specific armor pieces and colors, but you're in the game! That's you in there! You're the main character and you get to look at yourself being cool. It's one of the times where the Triforce of Halo's multiplayer bled into the campaign experience as well. And to my memory, that doesn't happen very often with Halo. This simple addition of having your character be the main character is the most sorely missed aspect of Halo campaigns to me. It just doesn't feel the same playing as the Master Chief for the 50th time when we've had such a succulent taste of having our personalities integrated into the campaign experience. Ultimately, it's not the biggest deal, and certainly didn't help with holding a player base better than Halo 3, because of course, campaign is for the most part a one and done. Even if you love the experience like I do, you wouldn't continually play it over and over again for years on end. But it tried something amazing, and I miss it. Future Halo titles feel blander for not including this feature, a disappointment that I feel may have contributed to the franchise's decline, however marginally. Reach was also the first Halo title that I would describe as having taken notes from its contemporaries. More on this in the future for sure. Compared to the previous Bungie titles, it had a pretty different art style that's more reminiscent of other popular shooter titles around the 2010s. Grittier, more militaristic, and very, very gray and washed out. Take the Halo 3 EOD helmet against the Reach EOD helmet, or the Halo 3 Mark V helmet against the Reach Mark V helmet. Hell, just take a Halo 3 Spartan in its entirety and a Reach Spartan in its entirety and put them side by side. While they still feel like they belong in the same universe, there's a pretty noticeable difference in the design language between the two. From clean, sleek, and almost action figure-esque to hard, grounded militarism with pouches and straps and wrist-bolted GPS units. I wouldn't consider it a bad thing, since it enhances the despair the story conveys, but it certainly is a noticeable departure from the previous titles, and again I find it in line with Reach being the precursor to the franchise's decline. It essentially set up the even more extreme art style shift that 343 propagated with the Reclaimer Saga. Still, Reach's campaign delivered what it had to, which is definitely one of the reasons why it's looked back on so fondly. Did the fall of Halo begin with Reach? I don't think so, no. Both it and Halo 3 continued to thrive for their respective lifetimes. It wasn't until the next mainline entry in the franchise that storm clouds began to gather over the Halo community. Overall, Reach is still a fantastic Halo game. I recommend it as a starting point for newcomers to the franchise, especially since its legacy and the legacies of its peers are stored forever on the Master Chief Collection. I just hope that what was covered today was enough to show that Bungie took an axe to one of the core pillars of Halo's Triforce of multiplayer, and that decision before their departure was the precursor to the dark times of the Reclaimer Saga, which we will be taking a look at next time. Thank you for watching, it means a lot. Stick around for part 2 in maybe 2 weeks, where I'll be looking at Halo 4 and 5 and how 343 made decisions that perhaps weren't the most healthy for the popularity of the franchise. Do you agree with what I think about Reach laying the groundwork for those bad decisions? Bungie's metaphorical fumbling of the ball to 343? Let me know down in the comments down below in the third pit of hell. I'd love to hear some other thoughts on this subject. For now, I'll leave off on this. It took 1 month and 6 days for Reach to fall. I think for Halo, it took a lot longer than that. Cheers, and have a good one.